On the night of Cameron's accident, we received a call for a car accident with somebody trapped and unconscious. We've landed at a football oval, a couple of 100 metres if that from the scene. Cameron had been in a significant impact where it was reported he'd hit what we call the B pillar, or the pillar beside the driver's head, to a power pole. And that had caused significant intrusion or impact into the vehicle. He had a significant head injury and chest injuries associated with that impact. Road ambos had placed him in an induced coma and found that he was having some trouble getting air into his lungs, so it was evident that he had what we call a pneumothorax, or air trapped inside his chest and compressing his lungs, so they placed a needle in his chest to try and relieve that air. We found at the time that Cameron's oxygen levels were really low, despite having a breathing tube in place and being ventilated on 100% oxygen. It was very evident at the time that he had a significant head injury. Focuses on managing his blood pressure and his oxygen levels to try and protect his brain as much as possible.
So everyone who's in that room has a specific role to play. Once we've set it up and people have identified who they're going to be and what they're going to do in the role, we have a team leader that sort of is like the conductor of an orchestra. He'll oversee everything, or she'll oversee everything and make sure that it's working. And we go through the problem list as it's presented to us, what the nature of the injury is, are the vital signs okay, do we need to protect the patient's airway, do we need to put this tube in or that tube in, what sort of lines do we need, what imaging we need, and getting the patient off to CT to see what the internal injuries are.
Because he's had a significant deceleration injury. If we can't see anything immediately, we worry about diffuse axonal injury, which is a more severe kind of brain injury where the little neurons, the brain cells, are actually torn. Unfortunately, we can have a normal scan and still have a very, very severe brain injury.
I think there's always a human element to it. It's a tragedy that is playing out, where the person who's been involved in a car accident, who's stepped in front of a car, who's fallen from a building, all of the sort of normal causes of trauma, has been living a life, has aspirations, and then in that moment things will change. Not everyone recovers 100% from a trauma.
The thing is that parents shouldn't be burying children. That should be always going the other way around. So it's a big shock, very hard to take.
So as a microflight paramedic working at Air Ambulance, one of our major areas of work is major trauma, and of that, major road trauma forms a significant part of our workload. Our role is to come and try and slot into where things are at and help sort it out and provide the best clinical care we can, and by using the helicopter, obviously provide rapid transport back to the major trauma centres where these people can then hopefully be fixed up.
This song is called, well, actually it doesn't have a name yet. I wrote it.
I remember someone describing the scene as brutal.
Well, Bethany was in a coma for about 2 months.
A lot of her brain was affected, so they didn't know how she would come out of the coma or if she would and what would be affected.
But I don't remember any of it. I didn't even remember that I was driving. I thought something else happened to me, like I was in another accident.
One of the worst head injuries that I've seen in over 20 years of ambulance. She was just driving a car, minding her own business, and got struck by someone coming the other way.
We train long and hard to try and do our very best to save these people, ease their suffering, reduce their pain. The reality is that there's a lot of devastation involved in major road trauma, and despite having world's best care, sometimes we don't have great outcomes. People are left with devastating lifelong injuries that they then have to adapt and deal with.
We would see a lot more if we didn't have all the safety measures that are being put into place now and those that are being spoken about for the future. But it's just a matter of physics. When you're moving that fast and you're hitting something, that there's going to be that transmission of energy that's going to cause significant injuries for anyone.
These scenes are very dynamic. There's a lot of things happening. There's a lot of people involved. There's a huge number of resources from police, fire brigade, state emergency service, paramedics.
But sometimes there are aspects of a trauma that do actually leave an emotional stamp on us. But we often then have the relatives in the relative room who are knowing that their loved one, partner, father has been in a very serious car accident, and their emotional state is all about what's happened, what's the outcome going to be. There's a lot of research going on at the moment to try and get, if you like, a better view into that degree of injury. We still don't have the imaging techniques that really let us go down onto that micro level to be much more, if you like, prognostic when we're dealing with injury as it first presents. But we still don't know a lot about what actually happens at that nerve cell level or the way the nerve cells communicate with one another at the time of injury and after injury.
What we call a diffuse axonal injury or shearing of the brain tissues isn't necessarily greatly evident initially, and that takes time to reveal itself, and it takes a long period of time then to see what the outcomes are likely to be.
It was a Thursday before Christmas and I was into the doctor's and my phone rang and it was the hospital. Cameron was on the phone talking to me and he had a full-blown conversation with me, and for somebody who hadn't said anything for 6 months plus, it was incredible. It was a real heartfelt moment, that one. It was tremendous.
And I really love playing netball. Like, I would go and watch games and I just think, gosh, how I would just love to get on that court. But I know I can't at the moment, but I can't wait to get back to that. And singing. I can't sing anymore. And I used to love that.
So I'm glad I got to meet him. It's good to meet the person who really looked after me and saved my life pretty much.